Today on Marketing Over Bourbon, renowned innovation catalyst Lee Kitchen is back and sharing techniques for overcoming creative blocks, handling resistance to new ideas, and a few of his favorite stories from his incredible career at Disney. I'm your host, Sheila Butler of Butler Marketing Group. And whether you're leading a team, growing a business, or just looking for inspiration, this conversation will provide insights you can apply today. So relax, settle in, and hold on to your bourbon glasses because we might be spilling a few Disney secrets on this episode of Marketing Over Bourbon. So Lee, thank you for coming back. Hello.
Thanks for inviting me and for pouring my favorite bourbon. Very good.
Okay, so this is Angel's Envy.
Delicious.
It's very good. You like yours on the rocks.
I do. Yeah, one rock.
Okay.
One big ice ball or
One
rock.
big, slowly melting rock.
Yep.
Okay, more of a neat girl. All good.
Yep. Nice.
It just brings out different flavor notes, I think.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Okay, so let's dive in. So creative blocks, we all get them, right? Even most creative people get creative blocks. And so what's your go-to method for helping organizations uncover those roadblocks, because it may not be even conscious, right? And work through them and get them back on track again?
Well, it starts with the individual, right? So I ask people this all the time. Where do you come up with your best ideas? Where?
Not when I'm stressed out.
Right.
Right? I'm probably I'm probably on a jog.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Or like doing something totally random, like I might be at the gym.
Yep.
Right? And you're like, oh, I want to write this down.
Yeah. So many times people just stampede straight towards the challenge, right? They're like, what ideas do you have? I want to know what ideas you have. You know,
be creative.
The boss is like, go in that room and don't come out of that room until you come up with ideas. And then you get in that room and you're like, what in the hell? You can't do it, right? It's too stressful to do that. So the trick is you got to kind of fool your brain, right? And in the creative problem solving world, what they say is instead of walking straight toward the challenge, you have to go walk out in the middle of the forest, right? You have to take this abstract journey to get to where you're going, because you're not going to come up with the idea you need straight down. Or if you do come up with the idea, it's going to be the same thing you did last year, right? And so it's really important. There's a concept that I teach groups, and I call it the third. So if you're creating ideas, the first third of ideas are always going to be the things that you've done before, right? Those are that you think you're revolutionary. No, it's the same stuff you did last year, right? The second third, right, is where you come up with like the little bit more novel. It's adding some components you've never done before, a new way to solve a different challenge. The third is when you come up with those game-changing things, right? And that's what we want to get to when we're creating ideas and stuff like that. So I just try to help people take that abstract journey first, and then we'll swing around and we'll get to the challenge, but you have to dance around in this obscure place for a while, which makes people uncomfortable, and that's the ticket. Right. The more uncomfortable you are at a brainstorm session, it means I'm doing my job right.
Yes. So one of my favorite quotes is, and I'm going to get this wrong in terms of the order, right? But there's no comfort in growth and no growth in comfort.
Yep, it's absolutely true.
You just got to push people out there.
And that's why a lot of people don't like going to brainstorms, because they know I'm going to make them feel uncomfortable. But the thing is that I'm not just going to do it for, I'm not going to make you do a trust fall just for trust fall's sake. We're going to do a very purposeful trust fall. You know what I'm saying?
No one likes trust fall.
No, they don't like holding hands either. So, but it's funny because when you get a facilitator like me, they automatically think that's what I'm going to do. And the first thing I say is, all right, we're all going to stand in a circle and hold hands. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm kidding. Come on. And that loosens them up just a little bit. So.
All right. So let me add just a little bit more to this whole conversation around creative blocks, right?
Okay.
I feel like sometimes, and you touched on this a little bit in our previous discussion, but sometimes people walk in and they've got I've got this idea and they can't get off of it. And I think that I've used a thing called the dumpster, which is basically when you get in, write down all the ideas in your head. So you're just like, okay, and now we've discussed them. Yeah. Okay. Off the table now.
You already know the trick.
Move on.
That's exactly what I do too.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, it's just a low-hanging fruit exercise, because people and I hope people do. I hope people do waltz in with their own ideas. But what happens is that those ideas are directly related to the way they've been thinking. So they're although they might seem novel, they're probably really close to what we've got. So I have to take them in a different place, and I use a bunch of different tools in order to get them there. And it's basically just changing their thought process, adding in something random, adding in something that some other business is doing that they don't even know is related to theirs, and seeing what they can come up with. And it's amazing to watch, because many times again, people are so locked into how they think about stuff, they can't think about it another way, right? We call it in the design thinking world, we call it your rivers of thinking, or your just the way you always think. And you have a deep river of thinking about your business and about how much you know about it and about your consumers. But a lot of times you have to jump out of that river and just be in a total foreign place for a while to be able to totally think clearly about it.
Yeah. I remember a story that a gentleman that we used to work with named Scott was telling me that for years he had pitched to the creative teams that we should use the castle as basically a projection facade.
Dude,
right?
I know who you're talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
And he sold it
over and over and over.
2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Like probably more than that, right?
And people could not see it. They
right?
see it, right?
And now when people see Happily Ever After, right?
Yeah, amazing stuff.
And the other things, you're like, oh my God, they're projecting this stuff on the castle. And he was like, yeah, thank you so much. I thought about this, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, whatever, right? Like,
I've got another story about that too. I'm sure it'll lead to another question, but
okay.
One of the things people constantly ask me is about how do you do anything with these impossible ideas, right? And I have a perfect example that I tell them, because if you remember back in the day when we were doing What Will You Celebrate, right? We needed something really big because we were giving away stuff all the time. And the idea that had been on everyone's mind for like 20 years was, why couldn't we put a suite inside the castle, right?
Yep.
There was binders, back in the day we used binders, on reasons why not. You know,
people want to sleep in the castle.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, but
you know, the castle, you don't know what it's like backstage. They use it as a green room, all this other secret stuff. It's not disabled friendly. It's, you know, there's nobody that works at night in the park, that kind of
storage.
thing. Yeah, it's storage.
Yeah, like how do we let people out? You can't be out of the castle.
So we got these people together and we said, hey, we already heard, and we showed them all the things. We had files, like the stacked files. These are all the reasons why not. We already know that. Look at, they're here. So let's think of reasons we could. And we all put our heads together, and a year later, we had a suite in the castle. And it was the most awesome thing in the world that people could win a night in the castle. You couldn't see outside, but it was still pretty darn magical, right?
Well, so I've never seen inside, but what is that guest experience, right? And it's not, is it used today? I don't even know if it is.
They still use it today, and again, mostly for contest winners. But yeah, it's a really VIP experience. There's one person, that a guest relations person, that kind of hangs out as your on-call person. You're in the room for a night, and then you come back down the next day, kind of thing.
Okay, so they bring you your food, right?
Yeah,
or like, how does that work?
Yeah, if you need something, they'll bring it to you.
My butler service.
Exactly. Butler, get it?
But I'm right. Yeah, I'm here all day.
But that's what I use that comparison, because people say that's idea is impossible. Well, that idea to every Disney person was impossible, and we made that stuff happen. And so I tell people, you can make impossible ideas happen. Come on, it's possible.
I love it. That's your thing.
Yeah,
right.
I love bringing up examples.
Magical Do Consulting. All right, so let's talk about defining creative success.
Okay.
So, how do you define success in a creative project? Because often that's very subjective, right? So, is it about measurable outcomes, the process itself, or something else entirely?
It's a combination. So, most of the time when I'm working with clients, of course, the client they've got an objective that they want to come out of a session or a creativity session with, et cetera. So we create this really great, inspiring challenge question. We brainstorm against it, and we come up with a bunch of ideas, 100 ideas, that maybe we're going to choose like 4 or 5 of them. And if they pick one, then boom, success, right? However, the residual, a lot of times from sessions that I do, it goes beyond just the idea that we're solving for that project. What happens is they discover that, hey, we can work, the marketing people can work with the operations people, and look at how the magic that happened. Why don't we do that the next time? Whoa, what a novel idea, having those same people in the room, right? And then all of a sudden you get people working together, and again, they're doing a common language around creativity, and their organization just runs smoother. The notes that I get 3 or 4 weeks later from sessions I do from individuals is the joy of my job, because they're like, hey, you know that one thing that you taught us, that make an offer, take an offer thing, that's changed our entire outlook of us working with other departments. And I love it because it means I had an impact, right? And that's not going to change that one project, but overall it'll change how they do business, which will end up changing something, you know? So that's the other thing. When you're in my role, you have to let go of this ownership, which is a tough gig, because a year later, after I work with a client, I'll see an ad, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the thing that we worked on. But it's like morphed until whatever it is. But like, I don't own any of that. I just start them on the process, and whatever it becomes whatever, you know, kind of thing. So
I love it. But that's about legacy, right? So when I was forming my company, I decided that my brand promise would be I want to leave a legacy with businesses,
Yeah.
right? For through the work that I'm
Yeah.
doing, right? And Disney V says the one thing when I go to Disney, I'm like, it's still there.
I was
right?
just
After all
talking about
this
that the
time,
other day.
like
Yes.
literally worked on the
And
deal
those
and
people are
launched
obsessed
it.
with that. They got cards with Darth Vader and stuff like that.
I
Come
know,
on.
right? Like 22 years later,
Yeah.
what is your legacy?
I
Or now, or what do you want it to be in the future?
again, I love to inspire people, and I feel like I have a gift. I just have this gift, right? And if I'm not using it to this end, I'm not doing anybody any good. So my job is to go change people's minds, to help them think differently, to help them collaborate and get together. Again, Jolly Santa Claus going in, right? I have no agenda. I'm a third party person. I'm just trying to rally you up to make sure you come up with good ideas. So
Yeah.
my legacy is our business has changed. Anytime I go back to Taco Bell specifically, I will get people that will come up that hadn't seen me in a year and go, man, ever since you left, this happened and this happened. It's just such a joy that the one little thing that I did, led to such big things. It's really cool.
I love it.
Cool to see.
Is there a menu item that you helped inspire?
No, but I'll tell you
Because I
right
want to
now.
order I
back-
want to order
back
the
during-
lean number 5.
Yeah, back during COVID and they took the Mexican pizza away, it was a big deal, right? And I did a lot of virtual brainstorms with them back in the day, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I went there one time and they brought it back, but they knew that I wanted to take credit for it. So they got me a shirt that said, I brought back the Mexican pizza. And they got it like my size. And like the CEO, Mark King, he hands it to me. He's like, hey, I know you're taking credit for this anyway, so just take this shirt. I was like, thanks, man. It was really, he made a point to give me that shirt, which I thought was pretty cool.
Is that like your favorite shirt?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. I just disclaimed it, nothing. But it's cool the fact that he thought it was important to me. So
Okay, so by
Yeah.
the way, you're always a great dresser. Always a lot of energy, right?
Yeah,
so tell
yeah.
me about your shirt, and then next time, please promise me that you're going to wear your Taco Bell shirt.
Oh yeah, well I got to dig it up because I've got so many more. So yeah, I love wearing flashy shirts, specifically when I do keynotes. My wife, who is my business manager, we have individual names for each one of my shirts, so I don't wear the same shirt to the same gig. It's it's just a nice little signature. Being a big guy like me, I gotta like make a presence. So having flashy sparkly shirts.
Are
is
you going to
my
share
thing.
the name of your shirt?
Oh, so this one is called what's it called again? You got a French one? No,
I don't know.
no.
Sexy
This one
date
is-
night?
no, it's
No,
called
it was about
Flo-
wine.
This one is called Floral Wine Date because the first time I wore it was a night we went out to a really nice steak restaurant. We had a flight of wine and we might have gotten a little bit, tipsy on the wine, and so we call it Floral Wine Date. That's what this one's
I
called.
love it.
So.
Okay,
But
awesome.
the one I wore the last time, I think, was called Synesthesia because it was all groovy and cool and stuff like that. So, again, I just named them so I don't wear this. I don't want to wear the same shirt to the same keynote or the same company, right? Who wants
Do you
to
write
that?
this down?
Yeah, we do. We keep notes about it.
Way more thorough than I am.
Important stuff.
Awesome. So, Lee, in 2025,
Yep.
you and I are both launching new initiatives. Mine is this show, Marketing Over
Which
Bourbon.
is great. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. But tell me about yours, because you're pivoting from something that
am.
you used to do to something new, and I want to
Yeah.
hear all about it.
So before I had a music show every Friday night, we would get together and I would host a dance party DJ show. I was recently out golfing with a good friend of mine named Jeffrey. We were entertaining a random fourth that got paired up with us with stories from guest relations, Disney event stories.
Okay.
And he's like, you should have a YouTube channel. So I'm going to start a YouTube channel that's basically storytelling with all my friends. I have friends from all walks of life, all from around the world, and I'm going to ask people to tell a funny work story and what happened and how they resolved it. If it comes up to a point at the end, great, we'll make a point. If not, it'll just be a funny story. Shouldn't be more than about 15 or 20 minutes, but I'm looking to launch that in the next 3 months.
Okay,
So,
that's very cool. Do
yeah.
you have a story in mind that you really love that's like one of your classic funny stories that you will share?
I have plenty of stories, but there's a couple in particular that I'm sure going to tell, and that's I said earlier in the show that one of my greatest tours I had was Van Halen, and so we basically were hired as tour guides to be in the party for when Wolfgang Van Halen turned 4 years old. That's how long ago it was, right? And so we're all standing around, basically just making sure everybody's having a good time. We're not even we're just standing around, right? Mm-hmm. And Valerie Bertinelli, who was Eddie's wife at the time, sweetest lady in the world, she invited us to come sit down and eat. Now, as a Disney employee, I was always told you don't eat in front of guests, especially as a tour guide. But she was inviting, and the lead tour guide was like, well, the if she's inviting us, we can totally sit down and eat. So I was like, heck yeah. And I went and they had these really huge shrimp. Disney was famous for these like enormously nuclear shrimp. They were like this big, right? And so I grabbed this plate of shrimp and I'm like stuffing shrimp in my face. And all of a sudden, Eddie and Alex like rush out the door. Like somebody doesn't feel good, they rush out the door. And like I'm eating my shrimp and I've eaten like probably 18 at the time. I got 2 left. And I'm putting one in my mouth, like in my mouth. And Alex Van Halen runs in and he yells really loud, "Whatever you do, don't eat the shrimp!" And I'm like, I've got the tail sticking out of my mouth. And I'm like, what? And I'm looking down at the 18 other tails that I just ate. And he thought that Eddie had gotten food poisoning for the shrimp, which it didn't turn out to be. But like, what the hell? I had just eaten 18 of them. Anyway, that's one of the stories. This is what I'm talking about.
I think that you need to have someone that we worked with on the show. And Tom is his name.
Yep.
And I don't know if you remember that during press events and so forth, we would have room keys, and we would have like here, just grab the room key and take a nap for a couple hours, right? Because you're staying on
I know the
you know what I'm talking about?
I know the story.
So you're staying at a Disney hotel. Because the press events, it's like, it was when like the media was invited, right? For like a big celebration, right? So
totally.
it's like TV and radio people and newspaper people. And so Tom was like, okay, I need a key. Like, I got to go take a nap for a couple hours, right? Because it's like, I've got to be like up at 4 a.m. or something. And so he gets to the hotel room and the key doesn't work. And he's like, what am I going to do? And he sees, I think, this maintenance person. He's like, can you help me? Because I can't, like, the key isn't working and I got to take a nap, right? And we're all just swapping keys, right? And so the cast member helps him into the room. I'm probably getting this story slightly wrong, so we'll have to ask him one day. He gets into the room and he sees these like bags on the floor and he sees these people sleeping and he's thinking, oh, these are cast members like working the press event, right? Because that was the whole point. We all just like grabbed a room and you just grabbed a bed and you showered and you went back out to work, right? And then suddenly he has this realization that it's not the right room, which is why the key didn't work.
Yeah.
These are actually
These are guests and he just walked into some stranger's room. No.
In the middle of the night. He's like trying to like slowly like back it up before he wakes them up. Yeah, I think there are a lot of stories like that.
I think so too. I'm sorry, I'm going to just say this out loud, but we were just talking about the Hatchers. So the Hatchers always have Christmas parties or whatever parties every year. And I had an event in downtown. I was like going to join later, and I didn't get there till 11. But there were still cars parked out front, and I could still hear music coming from somewhere. And I bust in the door, and Lily, their dog, is barking at me. And the party's always downstairs. And like 2 seconds later, Wyatt, their son, comes over. He's like, dude, the party ended like 2 hours ago. And so I just totally walked into their house, and I was going to walk all the way like down, and it just walked around the house. Sorry, guys. He's like, no, they're done. They've been done since 10. And I was like, gosh darn it. Sorry. You know, it's a kind of an open policy there. So
I love it.
Same situation. Anyway,
your show's going to be a great success.
That's basically what it is.
I love it.
I mean, how fun is that? Just people have so many funny stories, especially when it comes to work that we can all relate to, right? And to me, my job is to inspire people, and so I hope that people get inspiration from it because we had to work I mean, there's some people have some really weird stuff that they got out of, and how the heck did you do that?
Right.
And so that's why I want that inspires people inspired by how it worked out, or just laugh.
I love it.
It's good to have a laugh.
All right, so we didn't talk about Elmo in this episode. So can you just share real fast your Elmo technique and how useful it is in meetings with clients?
Yeah, so Elmo, again, since we're enough, let's move on. You bring them to meetings, you threaten them with a rule and saying, hey, if you get to analysis paralysis enough, you can hand somebody else an Elmo and they'll know to shut up. So
yes, let's move on.
I never really have to use it because I just mentioned Elmo and nobody wants to get handed Elmo. So I've had clients, though, that have bought Elmos for their entire organization because they're obviously talkers at meetings, and so everybody's throwing Elmos at everybody. But like, it's a fun little, it's one of those kind of passive-aggressive things that I do at meetings to help keep people's behavior right. So,
I love it.
Yeah, behavior is everything, especially at brainstorm sessions.
Yes,
so,
indeed.
You know.
Okay, so let's talk about the creative process and how do you break that down. So there are many people who would say, I'm not creative, I'm not the marketing person or whatever, right? So what's the first step that you recommend for people approaching a problem and tackling it with the creative mindset?
So a lot of times, everybody says it, right? I'm not creative.
I'm not creative.
And I do an exercise to basically showcase, hey, you picked out an outfit today. All your clothes are dirty, and you got creative, and you made somehow you got through college eating ramen, and it tasted differently every night because you couldn't afford anything else, right? So let's just dispel that rumor. And then a lot of people think that creativity means artistry, and so I do an exercise that I call Blind Picasso, which I ask people to pair up, and then they draw each other without looking down, and boom, they're an artist. They've drawn a Picasso. So let's just set that aside now. We know we're creative.
It is
now.
hard.
Yeah.
By the way, but it actually turns out when you look at it, you go, wow,
it
that's
looks like
pretty
a
impressive.
Picasso, right? Exactly.
It totally.
So
right.
so I alleviate that right out of the gate, and I think what happens is as a session or a brainstorm that I do goes along, people start being supported by other people because people are making and taking offers, yes, and things like that, and all of a sudden, oh wait, I'm being heard, because in my office, no one ever listens to my ideas, so I don't say ideas, right? But when I set the rules up, everybody has to be heard. And so when you start being heard, you start offering up more ideas. And then when I offer you that, you offer something back, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of this. And you just keep going back and forth, and all of a sudden, wow, I didn't know I could be so creative.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's a good place to be.
Okay, so sometimes people come up with ideas.
Yep.
And let's face it, not every idea is going to be a brilliant one.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes people are just resistant to the idea.
Yeah.
And it could be anyone. It doesn't matter what department or what company, right? So especially if it's taking them like way out on the limb, which I think is where the fruit is, but oftentimes people are very, very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
So how do you approach situations where you're trying to get buy-in and it's a tough road?
Yeah. A couple things I'll say about this. Number one is all ideas sound horrible. And I tell people to watch their body language and what they look like, because when you say an idea and like you're excited about it, I mean, think about it. Think about the last time you had a really great idea and you couldn't wait to tell some random person, whoever it was you come across, and you actually told that idea, and what's the first thing they do? They give you the crooked, the
golden retriever
they give you
head
the
tilt,
look,
like,
and
what?
you're like, what, you don't know? It's so great, right? And it's because your idea is so crystal clear in your head, it's hard to tell somebody, and it's so foreign to them. They're like, what in the heck, right?
Right.
A suite inside a castle to an operations person who works at Magic Kingdom was like, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. All the roadblock, that's just how people think, right? And so I remind them about things that were different, right? And here's a story I'll tell you. It's a fake story. It's not real. But imagine like 20, 30 years ago, right? There's two people sitting in a New York diner, and they're it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. They're half drunk, and they're like, we can't find a cab to get home. This is horrible. And the one dude's like, look at all those cars out there. Why can't we just ride home with one of those people? I'm sure they're going home with us. And then the other dude's like, that is the stupidest idea. No way I'm going to be drunk and get in a car with a stranger in the middle of the night. That's the lamest idea ever.
And here we are.
I mean, seriously, imagine that idea at first. Your mom told you not to ride with strangers, and now we're paying for it. You know what I'm saying? So ideas always sound horrible at first. I think what people fail in most cases is the pitch. Like, I worked at Yellow Shoes, and I watched a lot of my art director friends at Yellow Shoes fail in the pitch because they get up there and they self-deprecate right out of the gate. Well, we've got 3 ideas, but they're really not the greatest. And you're like, what? Dude, we just worked 3 months on this project, and you're just totally dissonant right out of the gate.
If you're presenting them, they better be good.
So when I talk about pitching, I'm talking about bringing this thing to life, right?
Yeah.
Like the person who, the producer for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when they were pitching to the producer of the show, they brought 10 million pounds, like in cash, and laid it on the table and played with cash. Like, they brought that idea to life. I always tell you, Joe Rohde bought a tiger to the Animal Kingdom meeting because they weren't buying it. And it was a huge 350-pound Bengal tiger.
Yes, tell that story, because
that's a true story.
That's exactly what popped into my mind.
Yeah,
it was like when you pitch, like Disney, like back in the day, they could do a real like big dog and pony show, like the music, the costumes, the whatever. So talk about that, because Joe already pitched Animal Kingdom.
Joe is my idol in that, because he was trying to sell Animal Kingdom to Michael Eisner and Frank Wells, the old school guard there. And he was on his 3rd pitch, and he had already shown them all the storyboards, and he gone to great lengths, and they were still not buying it, because it was like, why do we have to have a zoo? And people all over do zoos better than we could possibly do it. And then he was at his wit's end. So he's like, well, I'm going to bring this to life for these people. And instead of coming in with all the presentation boards. He walks in, and then he's got a trainer with a 350-pound Bengal tiger that leaps up onto the middle of the conference table. Imagine like those oval conference tables. You know, those people were like, oh my God, right? And he's like, how do you all feel right now? And they're like, well, I need to use the restroom now, but I feel like I can actually reach out and touch this animal. And he's like, that's exactly how people are going to feel Animal Kingdom. You're not going to see any barriers. You're not going to be at a zoo. You're going to be in the Serengeti. You're going to be out in safari. And they bought it. And it's a true story. I verified the story.
Yes.
And it's just, to me, you shouldn't bring a tiger to a meeting, but you should have that mentality, right? Like, you have to if you have a really great idea and you have to sell it to people, you have to somehow bring that idea to life in a way that they will understand.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people fall short on that, and they use a PowerPoint, or they just talk about it, and they like bring it to life, do a combination of things to you know, do a role playing, whatever it takes. You got to convince those folks, because again, new ideas sound horrible.
Yes.
Right? They sound horrible
Yes.
to everybody who doesn't know about them.
I
So,
will tell you that when I came up with the idea of the show and marketing over bourbon,
Mhm.
when I would say it, people would laugh because they're like, "Oh, that's kind of like funny, right?" Like,
Right.
like
like,
and
you're
I
not
thought,
seriously going to market over bourbon. Well, here we
I think
are.
that there a little bit of a laughter was about that. Like, really?
Yeah.
But I thought, well, we can talk about bourbon on some episodes. We definitely sip it,
Yeah.
right? We can talk
Enjoying
about
that part.
marketing. I know, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it takes a while to get there. And
Right.
and I think, you know, you and I are both comfortable with making things up as we go along. So,
Yes.
you know, here we are.
Here we are.
Okay, so we talked about some of the techniques, right?
Yep.
What do you find are particularly effective design techniques
Mm.
across industries? And are there some that just you go, you know what, this is not going to spark the creativity with this crowd, so
You know,
don't do
I
that
have
one.
several up my sleeve, and that all of them make people uncomfortable. Like, that's my job, is again to make people uncomfortable. But the thing about it is what I ask people to do is trust the process and follow the process, because if you do that, it's not like a homework assignment. What happens is that when you steer your mind off of again, not looking down the barrel, and you're going out into the abstract, that's when your brain activates, right? And so when I hand somebody a clothespin, for example, and I say, dissect this clothespin. What does it have? What does it offer the world? And write all these random phrases down. One of those phrases might spark something differently, and then we can apply that phrase to whatever challenge we're solving. And it works in manufacturing, it works in healthcare, it works in travel and leisure. It doesn't matter. It's so great. There's another one I use. It's called Break the Rules. And Break the Rules was basically something that companies like Uber and Netflix did, right? I mean, like Reed Hastings basically used the tool even before it was a tool, right? He decided to break the rules of going to the video store, because that's what we were all doing in the 90s. And he said, well, why do you have to go to the store? Why doesn't this movie come to you? That was unheard of, right? A movie
You got
coming
your
to
DVD
you.
in the mail.
And you
had
could
the
keep
list.
it as long as you wanted to.
Right.
You didn't have to pay late fees, because
You didn't have to
that's
rewind.
no rewinding. You keep as
Please be
long as
kind,
you can
rewind.
watch that lost episode as many times as you wanted, right? And then he envisioned a world where we're beaming shows to and watching a whole entire season in one day. That's ridiculous. No way we're doing that, right? And so totally breaking the rules of what the normal standard was. And I use that tool, then I basically ask people, list the rules that are holding you back. And let's pretend that for a second they don't exist. What
Right.
could you do if those rules don't exist? And that sparks this thought, and they'll come up with a bunch of funny ones, but then there's a couple nuggets that are like, wait a minute, we could do that. And we won't even have to break this rule, we could do that. So just getting them to think about it differently really sparks a lot of stuff.
I love it. By the way, so we've been talking
I've got
about.
an example of that too.
Yeah, go for it.
So my good buddies at Taco Bell, one of the rules that I did the session with them a while back, and you might have heard of this marketing campaign that they had, but one of the rules is that they couldn't actively use the phrase Taco Tuesday because it was owned by a company in Minnesota, right? I think it was Minnesota. And so they listed that as a rule, and they go, well, why couldn't we ask them to release the hold on that? Like, that was the idea, that we're going to go to Taco John's and we're going to say, hey, would you mind releasing Taco Tuesday, not for us to use, but for everybody to use, right? And so they petitioned Taco John. They took that idea and they petitioned Taco John's, and Taco John's happily released their stuff so everybody could use Taco Tuesday, and now Taco Tuesday is public domain, thanks to Taco Bell.
I love it. I love it.
So, but that all came from breaking the rule of not being able to use Taco Tuesday. So
I love it.
cool stuff.
Okay, good. Okay, so why don't you sip for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I want to thank our sponsor. So D3 Brewing Company, these guys are so amazing. And so hopefully as you're watching this episode, if you're not sipping bourbon, you're sipping either Three Wishes, Benny's Brew, Retired Rise, and all their amazing craft beers. So they know the importance of creating connections and crafting something unforgettable. So if you're toasting to a big idea, you're celebrating a small win, just savoring a moment of inspiration, or just frankly need something cold and delicious, D3 Brewing Company has the perfect pour for every occasion. And at every sip, you're not just enjoying an excellent brew, you're part of their story about loyalty, fun, and bringing people together. So cheers to great beer, great conversations, and the magic of D3 Brewing Company. So drinks up.
Cheers.
Yes, indeed. Okay,
Good
so
stuff.
let's talk about the digital age, right?
Yep.
So with the rise of AI and many other digital tools, how do you see creativity evolving in the next decade? And what advice would you give to teams to incorporate AI in their work?
So I have personally found that AI has really helped for supplementing. So you still need the human power to create ideas. Although you can pose a challenge question to AI and you'll come up with a bunch of ideas. It also works. But what I've been directing them to do is after I what I call concept their ideas and I send back to them, I say, hey, go take this idea and see what kind of different versions of it you could get from AI. So put in this prompt. So I'll preemptively tell them that. A lot of times I'll do it myself. So one of the part of the process is after I leave a session, I take the 100 or so ideas. I have recorded all the dialogue that came out of this session. So I'll compare the dialogue to what they wrote down, because a lot of times people don't write everything down. Yeah,
right.
so I'll consolidate that. I'll add in my own knowledge to boost the idea up to be understandable and sellable, basically. And then I'll go to AI and I'll basically say, hey, what different versions, and I'll put different examples on there for them. So as a supplement, it's great. If it's only you though, you're an entrepreneur, you can definitely use it as your creativity sidekick. Like that's another recommendation I have is always have a creativity sidekick, which is somebody you can bounce ideas off of, who will, instead of shoot them down, will build on them with you. And so if you don't have that person, hey, ChatGPT is a great supplement for that, right?
Chip and I are very close friends.
Yeah, nice.
I call it Chip, and yes, it's a coworker for sure.
You just gotta make sure. I know there's a lot of proprietary things on there, so you don't want to put your big ideas on there, maybe because it might be serving those up to other people too. But
correct, which I think is why large companies are, especially really large creative companies, are concerned about the use of that, right? And maybe they're using Azure or something that's more
they need
private.
to do something proprietary,
right?
Probably. Yeah.
Do you use Poe? Because Poe, if you haven't tried it yet,
I haven't, no.
As in Edgar Allan. So if you go into Poe, you can put in a prompt, and then you can ask it other bots to answer the same question. And then you'll find what's good for what types of tasks. So you may start with Claude or Sonnet and then say, okay, Chip, ChatGPT, right? Try this. And, and then you start to get these really different ideas versus just staying in one lane.
That's going to help your thinking, right? To me, that's all still the basis of getting what I call inspiration fodder to have your brain work on, right? You can't just start from nothing. That's why your boss sends you in that room and come up with ideas, and you're like, I got nothing. You need stimulus.
Right.
Our brains need stimulus, and wherever that comes from, it totally helps. So yes, I would recommend that too.
And if you haven't already, try ChatGPT. Use the voice. So you're having a dialogue with it. You're having a conversation.
That'd be awesome.
And you can say, okay, here's my pitch, right? So like you're thinking about a new client. Here's my pitch. Poke holes in this. What are the really challenging questions? What are the rebuttals that I'm going to get? And what are the ways that I can work through those rebuttals? It's amazing.
Great. I will try that. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. All right. So speaking about innovation and ideas, there are some industries that maybe either they don't see themselves as creative or as innovative, but they still need to adapt and evolve. So I worked in financial services for a long time.
Yeah.
And they can be creative to an extent, but there are also a lot of guardrails that they live within because of regulatory things, but also just because it's a sort of set in stone sort of industry, right?
Yep.
So how do you help industries like that in your work? And can you share some examples
Sure.
of what that looks like?
So again, using all of my what I call my lateral thinking tools really helps people get outside of their own way, right? I have a lot of healthcare clients. One of my healthcare clients up in Detroit, I was doing a session for 70 nurses and practitioners and nurse practitioners and other people who are directly help people that are in the hospital, guests, etc. And I suspected that I might have some resistance because it was a very regimented kind of situation. I happen to know this new technique that uses little toys, little Playmobil toys. The method is called Pro Play. There's another method that Lego has called Lego Serious Play, and basically, I brought a bunch of those. I put them out on the table, and the first thing they started doing was playing. Now, they felt when they walked in, they were like, "Uh-oh, like what are we gonna do?" Right? And as soon as they got into it, the thing I had them do is I had them model the situations, right? So I had them model real-time situations with each other.
Okay.
And the three-dimensional thinking opened their minds up to how it could be. And they also kind of informed each other of how they all thought. Because instead of yelling at each other for the process that doesn't work when we're together, they were talking about their models. And so they were playing it out with their little models. And they were able to be a lot more candid because it wasn't about you and me. It was about, oh, look at what my model's doing. Your model's doing this, right?
So these are like little miniature,
Yeah,
like
they're like
people
little toys, and they have
right?
a bunch of different elements. So you can pick little elements that go along with the people to represent, and it's this eye-opening way for people to think differently, but also to keep the conversation productive and to again have realizations because it's three-dimensional that you can't enact in your mind. It's mind-blowing stuff. I've brought really big, tough guys to tears with this thing. And I tell them up front, I'm like, hey, some people have a very visceral reaction to this 3D modeling, and some people might cry. And they all laughed at me. Yeah, we're all going to cry. And at the end of the last session I did with a bunch of wedding DJs, one of them broke out and cried because he had this realization that was really emotional to him. And he's since texted me and also changed his life because of 3D modeling and stuff. So, I mean, it's incredible. If you use the right tool, you can break through any tough exterior, really.
So how long are those Pro Play sessions, and how do you know what's the right tool for the right client?
Yeah, that's the tough one. It's timing has a lot to do with it. So if I have the Pro Play stuff takes a little bit of extra time because modeling, it's automatically extra because you have to spend time building it or getting it together. You have to spend time discussing it, and you have to spend time rearranging it to get to the problem solving part of it. So those sessions are 4 hours to 8 hours long for sure, especially when there's a team aspect, because when you have everybody around in the team and everybody's doing their own thing, and the important part about it is that you want the insights, and then you want to take those insights and create actionable things to change with them. So making sure those insights get captured and having the dialogue and the discussion is, you have to let it flow. You can't cut it off, or you can't try to pinpoint it to something. You have to let it free flow, and that takes a while, right, to let people talk. But if I don't have the time, I'll use one of the lateral tools. I can get it done in 15 to 20 minutes, and it nets 2 ideas per 6 people, and we've got a list of ideas. So it's set and setting and timing usually.
So you probably generate an enormous amount of ideas in any given session, right?
Yep.
How do you, one, take all those notes, because you're relying upon me and everyone else in the room to accurately write down things. You're trying to remember the nugget that it came from, if not everything is well documented, right? And then how do you sift through and find the best of the best? Like how do you help a client through that?
So the first of all, I try right up front to get the capture part really important, because so many times people have these grandiose ideas, and when they write it down, it's like 3 words. It's like, wait a minute,
You
first
talked
of all,
for 10 minutes.
Yeah, they talked and they raised their arms and they were doing stuff, and then they wrote down 3 words, and you're like, dude, I need more than that. So I drive home right up front. We do the special thing called the T-sheet. I make sure that they give the idea a clear name that's just a name that differentiates it from the other ideas. I make sure they write in full sentences.
Okay,
And
so this is like a T, like I make like a capital T and a piece of
exactly.
paper.
On the left side, it's a full sentence about what the idea is. And don't give me some ethereal stuff that's a rewrite of what our challenge is. What is it? I keep telling them, ask what is it? Is it a marketing campaign? Is it a communication tactic? Is it a new policy? What is it? What's the it? And I have them write that out in the full sentence. They can use bullet points after they've already described it, but then I also have them draw a stick figure picture, which is hilarious because most people don't know how to draw. And so get them to articulate it in an artistic way or in a visual way really helps kind of solidify that idea. But of course, not everybody follows by the rules. So when I get back to be able to, what I call concept the ideas, I remember what they talked about, but it's like, that's not at all what they wrote down. So now I also record the report outs, and then I'll take that audio, I will combine it with what they wrote, but then I'll also look at it to see, I know really what they meant. What they wrote down is not what they meant, which is why the audio works well. And then I'll rearrange it. And that process takes about an hour per idea. So when so if I have a session and that's 100 ideas, I tell my client, you're not getting them for 3 weeks because I take the necessary time for each idea to make sure that it's 100%, right? A lot of people don't draw pictures, so I have to go out to the internet and find some kind of representative picture of what it may be. And then usually what I do is I'll have a meeting with the client and I'll show them, hey, these 4 of them seem to be closest to what you said you wanted, but don't ignore these 4 that are so outlandish and weird, they just might answer it too. So, and because I've done this for 20 years now, I can pick out the outlandish ones, and it's amazing that so many of them just gloss right over them. And what's fun is that in your old industry, actually, I worked for a lot of timeshare companies.
Yep.
And I had NDAs with all of them, so I couldn't talk about what I was doing, but I would be they all were basically come up with, how do we generate more revenue, right?
Sure.
And I'd see some game-changing ones on there, and I'd be like, you should look at that one. Not telling them why, but knowing that no one else came up with that idea. And they're like, no, we'd never do that. I'm like, well, that's in my mind, I was like, that's the problem.
Right, how to get someone to take a tour or like to buy the vacation package or use it, right?
And it was just amazing that I would see similarities, and you'll be like, well, that's probably why you're not leading the industry then. There's the one game changer, but I couldn't tell them why. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
We're taking a quick bourbon break. So while glasses are refilled, let's talk about something as important as a good pour, your marketing. I'm the founder of Butler Marketing Group, and we help businesses, small, medium, and Fortune 500, navigate growth and transformation with marketing that's strategic, intentional, and built to leave a legacy. Whether you need branding, marketing strategy, loyalty, or a fractional chief marketing officer, we've got the perfect blend of services for your business. Contact Butler MG to get started. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so one of the questions that we have is from a previous guest, right? So in guest relations, you were responsible for fixing issues to make guests happy.
Yep.
So tell me about a time when it was a really tough moment and you had to turn things around.
Yeah. So I have a really great story for this. It was one of the pivotal days of my Disney career. It was a hot summer day. I was at the guest relation window, which is out front, which means when people come to the window, it means they're angry because they can't get into the park, right? In most cases. And I had this gentleman come up. He was very upset about something, and I wasn't solving his problem fast enough. We had these little windows thing, and he was yelling, right? And I was like, I'm trying to help you, sir. And he was yelling, and I turned away for a second, and he reached in the window, and he grabbed my tie and pulled me up against the window. He's like, I don't think you understand. And I'm stuck in here. He's not really hurting me, but it's just like he's got me by a point here. And I'm like, sir, I can't really help you like this, right? And so I ended up helping him. He actually came in, they had him come into the back, and we ended up helping him. I'm actually forgetting what the issue was around it, but he was helped. I was at the tail end of an already long shift, so I was 8 hours into 9 hours, and I had just been asked to work overtime, really frustrated that they asked me to work overtime after they knew I just got choked in the window, right? So I was going back to take my one break in between it, and here comes this family who was soaking wet, and they asked me for a guide map. Now, I saw them coming, and I could have just, like I saw them out of my periphery, I could have just gone into the backstage. I wouldn't have to, but I was like, I'm going to help the poor family. And they were like, we just got here. There's 2 more hours left. What do we do? And so I walked in and I got them a guide map and I pointed a couple things out to them, yada, yada, yada. Didn't think too of went and had my 16-hour day. Well, like the next year, the people came back to renew their passes and they were like, that day and they told me the story. They had been soaking wet. Their kid got sick. They were in line and had to get out of like e-ticket attraction lines without going on the ride. And my showing them those few things made their entire life. And every year they would come back and renew their pass with me because of that. And one year they came back and their son, who had grown a little bit older, actually got a job at Disney. And so, because I inspired him or something like that. And then he came back after his father passed and he gave me a Christmas card or something like that. And he was like, you've made our whole stay here, blah, blah. And all I did was give him a guide map.
Wow.
That's all I did. And it was like, again.
At the end of a rough day.
Yeah. Like that's, again, you never know what little thing is going to, and how it's going to trickle down kind of thing. So, yeah.
When
Good
I
stuff.
worked Magic Music Days and Magic Kingdom Entertainment, right? So I was a guest talent coordinator. And I remember I felt such this responsibility when I had a dance group, marching band, or whatever, because they fundraised for years. And this is like the day that they've been dreaming of.
Yeah.
And so I can't be in a bad mood. I need to smile, but I would get home and I'm like, I can't smile anymore. I can't be nice to anyone, right?
Bourbon.
Like,
Cheers.
like 16 hours of being nice. I don't have anything left in the tank, people.
Mhm.
But yeah, there is this responsibility and that you feel, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And again, you don't know how you're going to change, Any interaction. I people still think I work at Disney, and I'll be at the gas station. They'll ask me where the restrooms are, and I will 2-finger point to the restroom.
That's right.
And
I'm
I still
inviting
do.
you to look.
I'm not going to ignore them. I'm good like that.
All right. So speaking about Disney and memories and moments, what is a very memorable workshop moment for you? So it could be inspiring, rewarding, unexpected.
Mhm.
Maybe it went totally south and you turned it around. Like what can you share?
From a workshop perspective, again, I've had a lot of difficult people that didn't behave correctly. And that's when I discovered I made up a thing because I had 2 executives show up at a session that they weren't supposed to be at. And they were the outspoken executives that usually just came with their ideas, right? Well, they showed up at the session and I could hear them, like I would monitor the little small groups and I would go up and I could just hear them, again, pitching their same stuff to the group. They weren't ideating, they were just pitching their ideas, right? Well, I came up with this really quick thing that I called Red Rover. And I was like, we're going to change up the team. Because every time I would change up teams, I'm going to change up the team. And it's like, Red Rover, send this person right over kind of thing. And I kind of manipulated in a way to where basically they ended up on the same team. And it was perfect because I put them with other people that were kind of like them.
Also sort of
and it worked. They ended up coming
ideas.
up with some really great ideas together because they weren't pitching their own ideas anymore. So that was a triumphant moment. And then I had mentioned on the last show, I had this one really difficult creative person who had been in the business for 32 years, wasn't going to budge. And then 2 days after they were at the 2-day workshop, they came up and said it was the single greatest time in their entire career. And it was just like, but you look cranky the whole time. Like, I couldn't understand it, but they got a lot out of it. Whatever. Never judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So you probably need inspiration, right?
Yeah.
So when you're looking for creative inspiration or great ideas, where do you go? Or do you have like practices or habits or like to get the ideas flowing, right? And get in the mood.
So I always tell people that they got to mix it up. So I make a point to try to listen to a different, I'm a big XM radio fan. I'll listen to a different station every day. And like this morning on the way in, I was listening to bluegrass. I hardly ever listen to bluegrass, but you can't be sad to listen when you listen to bluegrass, right? So I have people, I tell people to do different things. A lot of times I'll watch different YouTube videos. I love music. Music is a huge inspiration for me. There was a time when I had my own music show, and one of the things that I tried to do in my music show was make sure I played enough familiar, but I would play a weird version of, so I had a house version of Margaritaville, and I would mix that with my house version of another song that you know well, right? Or mashups. I would do a lot of weird mashups. So you'd never hear a radio version of a song because I just like, mixing it up creatively. So music was a really big outlet for me.
I love it.
So, and also surrounding myself with amazing people like you. That's very inspiring.
Thank you.
And I recommend that to everybody. If you don't have a set of creative sidekicks or creativity sidekicks, you should get one. And it's those people that you know will always add to your idea and not cut it down, right? You say, hey, I've got this great idea. Can we go over it? Can you help me build it? So I have this this wonderful person who used to work with me at Disney. Her name is Sura. Sarah and I are always, anytime we have a facility, we do the same thing. So whenever we have a facilitation, we always run it by each other, and then we will offer up different ideas to do it with. Or a community, right? If you have a community WhatsApp group, that helps too.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Right? Especially you and I, where we work very independently, right?
Yeah.
Unless we're with clients.
Yeah.
So it's
We
good
need
to have
people.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do need people. All right. So I remember back in the marketing days, many of the people in Disney marketing back in our heyday came from guest relations.
Yep.
And there was a conversation that came up one day in a meeting, and they were like, who would you go back into Plaid for?
Mhm.
So explain what is Plaid,
Yep.
and then who would you, and it could be a celebrity, a dignitary, like a favorite guest, who would you go back into Disney polyester Plaid guest relations for?
Nice. So the reason that we say Plaid is because back, and they still do, we all wore Plaid vests, and the Plaid was the same tartan. It was Walt Disney's tartan. That's what it was famous for. If you look at some of the older Disneyland footage, you will always see the tour guides. They had the horse riding outfits with the Plaid and the little riding crop and the whole deal, right? So wearing Plaid was like it's like an initiation. And also you're down in the trenches getting yelled at by people. So like you learn, like I learned everything I need to know in life from wearing Plaid, because I learned there were people different than me. I learned that people's expectations are all different. I really learned to empathize with guests and things like that. But being a tour guide was also one of the greatest things ever, because you got paid to ride rides and eat food, like what's this? They're paying me for this, right? So I enjoyed being a tour guide like crazy. I would definitely go back in Plaid to be a tour guide again. I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan, and I recently went to South by Southwest and got to see the two remaining Beastie Boys, Adam Horowitz and Mike Diamond. I saw them talk about their new book and talk about the other missing Beastie Boy, Adam Yauch, and I felt like I was part of their crew. Like I was sitting up front just listening to their conversation. It was so much like a conversation with any of my buddies that I could totally hang with these guys. So I would definitely go back and Plaid for the Beasties, for sure.
That's awesome. Because it doesn't look like the most comfortable of costumes.
Oh my God. Well, it is now, because they let them wear shorts, but back then it was polyester. It totally rode. It was, you had to keep pulling it down.
Long sleeves, long pants.
Yeah. No, there was not a guy in that area that liked the tour guide, the guided tour costume, which was the blue pants, because they were cut all wrong and it was horrible. But I love doing guided tours, but just not with that. Also, the girls got the riding crop and we got the pointer. Come on. We got ripped in that whole thing.
That's hysterical.
And a lot of times they would make us wear the full jacket too, which is like this bright white and blue Plaid that was really ostentatious, and it was just uncomfortable in Florida weather to do that. So
it is a pleasurable sacrifice to go back into Plaid for Beastie Boys.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
Hopefully someone will tell them from this episode, right?
I actually had two bands on my wish list that I got back in the day. I had Van Halen on my wish list, and I got to host them, and I had Duran Duran. I got to host them, so that was pretty great.
That's awesome.
They stayed true to their word to call you when your people came up. So who knows?
Very cool. Was that when Duran Duran played Pleasure Island on Thanksgiving?
No,
maybe?
It was before that, but they invited me to go see that, and I got a nice picture with them.
That's
because
awesome.
I had hosted them, so that was really nice. Yeah.
It was New Year's Eve every night at Pleasure Island.
Yep.
Okay. So bourbon. All right. So since we've been sipping bourbon, we've been sipping Angel's Envy. What bourbon most closely represents you and you as an innovation catalyst?
You asked me this the last show.
I
too.
know.
And but I've
you
been
can pick
thinking
a different
about
bourbon.
But I'm gonna say I like a bourbon drink. So I love mixing a Maker's Mark Manhattan because it's smooth, right? I like smooth bourbon. I'm a smooth dude, casual and stuff like that. So it doesn't need to be harsh. It's just smooth and cool. And Maker's is easy, and it's still attention to detail when they put the little wax across the top.
Yep.
I don't know. It's pretty simple. A Maker's Manhattan would be my answer to that question.
I love it. That sounds delicious right
Are you
now.
a Manhattan girl? You like
I
Manhattans?
do like Manhattans.
Okay, good.
Yes. I hadn't had one in a really long time. And I thought, what am I doing? I sip bourbon neat all the time. Why am I not sipping Manhattans?
It's easy. I had a lot over the holidays. I wouldn't say a lot, but I had a few. I made them for people.
This is a safe space.
Yeah.
Cone of silence,
Exactly.
other than YouTube.
Other than the entire internet.
And any other podcast where
Right.
you're enjoying this podcast. Okay, so I asked this the last time. You get to answer differently. So if you could do one thing again at Disney for the very first time, what would that be? Last time you said Rise.
Yes.
Rise of the Resistance.
Yes. So another thing that I have very strong memory about when I was a kid was going out on the little water sprites on the water, which they don't have anymore. But that was like the greatest thing because I was like king of my own little boat. I was only 12, and I got to drive around the entire Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon in my little boat. There's a very specific picture of me from like '79, and I'm driving that little boat, and I have like my smile is about ready to erupt on my face because I'm so happy. So that would be one thing.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that we do is you get to ask a future guest a question, right? So you and I were talking about networking and so forth, right?
Yeah,
and how do you keep up with all that? Because we meet so many people. So did you have something that you wanted me to ask about that?
I would ask, one of the things that I struggle with because I'm working on the follow-up part is how do you nurture and maintain relationships, right? Because I love the relationships with all my clients, and I'm lucky enough to where we have a good give and take call and response kind of thing. But a lot of times people go dark and you get ghosted, and you're like, how do you keep those relationships up? So that's how I said, what kind of active things are you doing to maintain relationships? It's also kind of a hint and advice because relationships are work. And when you asked me this question, the first thing I thought of when I thought about the relationship thing is on Google Maps, how you set your home and your work.
Yep.
So because I live in two different places, my home I set to my Florida, but where I live with my wife is work.
Right.
And she loves that.
And it's a different country.
Yes, but she loves that I call it work because relationships are work.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just like a married couple, you have to constantly work on that. You can't just let it be idle. You have to, with your clients, you have to continue to have dialogue, even when you're not doing business with them, And I'm really working on it. I need a system for it probably. So you got any recommendations out there? That's good. But like, I really want to be able to, again, work and maintain those relationships as good as possible. So I would ask that your next guest,
okay, awesome,
how they do that.
Surely someone has some good tips and tricks on how to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And also be authentic.
Yes.
Like I signed up for one friend of mine's website, and he emails me like 4 times a week. It's like, bro, I'm not gonna buy. I appreciate it, but like 4 times a week is just much, and I don't want to unfollow because I don't want the guy to know that I'm like bored of his stuff. But like, don't email me 4 times a week. I don't know. I want to come up with a balance.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Anyway.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up for
Excellent.
today. I would love to have you again.
Cheers.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your innovation thinking, right, with us. You truly are a catalyst and an inspiration to so many creative people.
Thank you.
And not creative people, right? So from helping your clients break through the creative blocks and apply the design thinking, your processes and advice, it's invaluable to people.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
And I want to thank Iron Pixel Studios. You guys are incredible. Look at us right now.
It's really nice.
I'm so blessed. And thank you to D3 Brewing Company. So you guys make some amazing craft beers. I very, very much appreciate you guys sponsoring the episode of Marketing Over Bourbon today. I hope that you all have been inspired by watching this today. I know I have been. And hopefully there's something here that you can apply to your business, your relationships, etc., whether or not it's techniques around design thinking, how to spark innovation, really in unusual ways, etc. Hopefully you can apply these lessons to the challenges that you're facing. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, like it, share it, subscribe to Marketing Over Bourbon, and remember the best ideas come when you take a moment to savor something great. So thanks for watching. Drinks up, Kungaloosh. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Hey.
Was
that the Entertainment Tonight music?
Yeah.